At exactly 6:12 a.m., the church bells of Stuttgart rang as they always had, steady and familiar, echoing through streets lined with orderly houses and bare winter trees. For most of his adult life, those bells had marked the start of another predictable workday for Markus Weber, a mechanical engineer who had spent nearly 3 decades inside the same industrial world. At 50 years old, Markus believed his life was settled, structured, like a German timetable, precise and dependable. What he did not know that cold January morning was that this would be the day his carefully built certainty would collapse. Markus had grown up in a modest household in Baden-Württemberg, the son of a toolmaker and a school secretary. In Germany, engineering was not just a profession, it was a cultural backbone, a respected path tied deeply to national identity. Precision, reliability, and discipline were values Markus absorbed early, both at home and later at university. When he graduated in the early 1990s, Germany's industrial sector was still roaring. He joined a mid-sized automotive supplier, proud to wear a suit with the company logo and to contribute to machines that powered Europe. For 28 years, Markus rarely questioned his routine. He arrived early, drank black coffee from a chipped company mug, reviewed technical drawings, attended meetings where efficiency was sacred, and returned home by 6. He married, raised a daughter, paid off a mortgage, and believed loyalty would always be rewarded. Promotions came slowly but steadily. His identity fused with his job so completely that when people asked who he was, his answer always began with, "I am an engineer." The meeting invitation arrived without warning, an impersonal calendar notification titled Organizational Update. Markus did not panic. Restructuring meetings were common in modern Europe, and German labor laws had long provided a sense of security. He walked into the glass-walled conference room with calm confidence, unaware that this time, the rules had shifted. The company had been losing contracts to cheaper manufacturers in Eastern Europe and Asia. Automation and digitalization had changed everything. When the HR representative spoke, her voice was polite, carefully trained, and emotionally distant. Markus heard phrases like strategic realignment, efficiency measures, and voluntary separation packages. Then came the sentence that ended a chapter of his life. Your position has been eliminated. At 50, Markus was officially redundant. He left the building carrying a cardboard box, an image he had only ever seen in American films. Inside were framed photos, technical manuals, and the mug he had used for decades. Outside, the city moved as usual. Trams ran on schedule, pedestrians walked briskly, and the bells continued to ring. The world had not stopped, but Markus felt as though he had. The weeks that followed were the hardest of his life. German culture values productivity and contribution. Unemployment carries a quiet stigma, especially for men of Markus's generation. Though he received severance pay and unemployment benefits, the loss of purpose weighed heavier than financial fear. Each morning, he woke at the same early hour out of habit, only to realize there was nowhere he needed to be. Job applications became a daily ritual. Markus sent out dozens, carefully tailoring each CV, highlighting decades of experience. Rejection emails arrived politely but firmly. Companies praised his background, then explained they were looking for a younger profile or someone more adaptable to digital transformation. The unspoken truth was clear. Experience had become a liability. Even at home, silence grew. His daughter had moved to Berlin for university, and his marriage, already strained by years of routine, had quietly ended 2 years earlier. Markus found himself alone with his thoughts, something he had never learned to handle. For the first time, he questioned his own worth. Was he obsolete? Had his best years already passed? One evening, while walking through a local park dusted with snow, Markus sat on a bench and watched younger people jog past, earbuds in, full of energy. He felt invisible. In that moment, he considered giving up, accepting early retirement, shrinking his world, and living quietly until the end. But something inside him resisted. Not pride, but curiosity. If his old life was gone, what could replace it? Enrolling in the program was terrifying. On the first day, Markus entered a classroom filled with people 10 to 20 years younger. They typed faster, spoke confidently about software he barely recognized, and seemed born into the digital age. Markus felt slow, outdated, and exposed. Yet he stayed. What Markus lacked in technical speed, he made up for with patience and deep understanding. While others knew how to use tools, Markus understood why systems failed and how processes could be improved sustainably. Slowly, instructors began to notice. Younger students asked for his advice. For the first time since the layoff, Markus felt useful again. Outside the classroom, he started reflecting on Germany's changing industrial landscape. Sustainability, renewable energy, and small-scale innovation were becoming increasingly important. Massive factories were no longer the only future. Europe was shifting toward localized solutions, efficiency, and environmental responsibility. Markus realized that his decades of experience could still matter, just not in the way he had imagined before. With encouragement from one of his instructors, Markus took a leap he had never considered: freelance consulting. At first, the idea felt absurd. He had always worked within rigid corporate structures. But Germany's strong mittelstand, small and medium-sized enterprises needed exactly what he offered: practical engineering solutions without corporate bureaucracy. His first client was a small, family-owned manufacturing workshop, struggling to modernize its equipment while reducing energy costs. Markus spent weeks analyzing their processes, listening carefully rather than imposing solutions. When he proposed small, affordable changes instead of expensive overhauls, the owners were surprised and grateful. Productivity improved, costs dropped, and word spread. Work came slowly at first, then steadily. Markus was no longer wearing a company badge, but he felt more connected to his work than ever. He set his own schedule, cycled to clients' sites, and rediscovered a sense of autonomy he had never known. For the first time, his life was not defined by hierarchy, but by contribution. Emotionally, the change was just as profound. Markus began volunteering as a mentor for unemployed professionals over 45, many of whom felt the same fear and shame he once had. He spoke openly about failure, about identity loss, and about the courage required to start again. In doing so, he healed parts of himself he had long ignored. At 52, Markus was not richer than before, but he was freer. He no longer measured his value by job titles or corporate loyalty. He measured it by impact, by the small businesses he helped survive, by the people he encouraged, and by the life he rebuilt on his own terms. In German culture, there is a word: Neuanfang, a new beginning. Markus had once believed new beginnings belonged only to the young. Now he understood they belonged to the brave. On another winter morning, 2 years after the layoff, Markus stood again in Stuttgart as the bells rang. This time, he smiled. He had learned that stability is not found in companies or contracts, but in the willingness to adapt. Losing his job had not ended his life. It had quietly returned it to him. And at 50, Markus Weber was no longer just an engineer. He was proof that it is never too late to begin again,